Hi, good evening. Welcome to the show, Never Again Live. I'm Meir Weinstein, and I'm joined with Mayor Jolowitz. Tonight, we're going to be discussing the so-called Gaza peace plan that we're calling now the Hamas Gaza Appeasement Plan, because that's what it's becoming, and it's becoming extremely clear to many people, so we want to go over this. According to the plan, Hamas was supposed to be demilitarized. They're controlling half of Gaza right now, fully armed, executing whoever they want to execute in Gaza in the most gruesome ways, publicly, filming it. Qatar and Turkey, vile enemies and supporters of Hamas financially, they're being presented as the peacemakers from Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. Just remember a few years ago when the World Cup was in Qatar, Jews went there, want to watch the game. There was violent anti-Semitic attacks in Qatar. And Jared Kushner was cozying up to his buddies from Qatar, watching the game, totally oblivious to the anti-Semitism that existed there. And for years, Qatar has been financing Hamas. Without Qatar, October 7th never would have happened. Egypt is part of this peace plan. They have not apologized for allowing arms to smuggle into Gaza. And now we're finding out that not only were the arms being smuggled through mainly the Rafah tunnel system there, but that drones are flying in currently now from Egypt into Gaza to replenish the arms for Hamas. To anyone that has a question, how come Hamas still has all these weapons? So there are thousands of Hamas terrorists at large in Gaza. The number keeps expanding. So what's going to happen with this so-called peace plan? Where are we headed? And then when the Israeli members of Knesset advocate for sovereignty and annexation of Judea and Samaria, which the Republican Party did say on their platform that they recognize Judea and Samaria and they don't use the name the West Bank. Now, the Trump administration is slamming the government of Israel. You better not call for annexation or sovereignty in Judea and Samaria. Where's the independence in Israel? Mayor, there's a lot to discuss, but what can you tell us about this so-called Gaza peace plan, or the resurrection of Hamas under the terms of this plan to be even stronger in Gaza?
Yeah. I'm probably going to mention the Gaza peace plan because that's the way that it's been framed, the way that Trump describes it, the way that Israel accepts it, the way that too many supporters of Israel have fallen into this nonsensical trap of calling it a peace trap. It's anything but peace. We have a gullible audience out there. There's a quotation that I often cite, which is attributed to David Wong, who says that gullibility is the knife at the throat of civilization. And it's true. The very predicate of this peace treaty, they called it a peace treaty. It's not a treaty and it's not peace. The very predicate of it is a bastardization of language, which is so fraudulent. It's a cunningly clever deceit of what's going on. We've heard Trump use the words, which I'm going to, some phrases, and sadly it's been echoed by Israeli officials, by Bibi Netanyahu, on occasion by Ron Dermer or others, people who are true supporters of Israel. They've referred to this as a peace treaty. They've referred to it as an eternal peace. They've referred to it as an enduring peace, a durable peace. They refer to it as the end of war. Trump just again yesterday, not for the first time, not for the second time, referred to total peace in the Middle East. He referred to this peace, which has been endorsed by 59 nations. And one has to ask the question of this thing, which is anything but a peace treaty. It's nothing more than the latest iteration of a ceasefire. But one has to ask the question, if the nations that you mentioned in your opening, Turkey, Egypt, and Qatar, three nations which consider themselves to be enemies to Israel, if they and Israel seem to agree on an agreement, a treaty or what have you, there's got to be something wrong here. And that thing that's wrong is the fact that we have pretended, at least publicly, that they are in fact honest brokers, the way that they've been described by Trump and, as you said, Witkoff and Kushner. It's a fraud. It's a fraud that's being perpetrated against Israel and all the people who support Israel, and needs to be called out. Bibi Netanyahu, who was heroic in certain aspects of this thing, has been fighting a war for 2 years against a terrorist organization which doesn't have a jet, doesn't have a submarine, doesn't have a battle cruiser, doesn't have a tank, has none of it, doesn't have a helicopter. And we've been fighting this war for 2 years, and it's not over. In fact, quite clearly it's not over. So this notion, as Trump again echoed yesterday, this is the end of war. On other occasions, I think we mentioned the last time that we were on together, he talked about this being the greatest peace treaty, or the first peace treaty in 3,000 years, 3,000 years between these combatants. 3,000 years, Donald, takes us back to the days of King David. It's absolutely absurd. On another occasion, he said this is the first time in 500 years, which takes us back to the Ottoman Empire, when the Muslims, in fact, were in control of that territory. Our side needs to wake up. They've got to stop being gullible. And forgive me, I'm just going to give one of so many examples that I could give. I listened to a wonderful speaker, proponent of Israel, very smart guy, a person who's dedicated his life, his adult life to Israel, Michael Oren. Michael Oren is a brilliant analyst. He's pro-Israel, former ambassador to the United States, appears everywhere, basically says the right thing. 90% of the time he says the right thing. So the podcast that I listened to yesterday, for 90% of the time, he was wonderful. But the 10% was an absolute disaster. And it gives a completely fraudulent view of what the hell is going on with this so-called peace treaty. He first of all said, and I don't give this any specific order, he said that this 20-point plan is a wonderful plan because it basically favors Israel. No, it doesn't. It absolutely doesn't favor Israel. And by the way, when he called it a 20-point plan, it was originally, some people might remember, 21-point plan.
Right.
So what happened?
Right.
What happened to that 1 point? That 1 point was something which Bibi basically petitioned the Americans to get out of the treaty, which is that Bibi was going to apologize to Qatar for having bombed Qatar. It's an embarrassment. When Menachem Begin asked, "What are we, a banana republic?" the answer is yes, Menachem. Israel is a banana republic. But among the other mistakes that he made, and I'll do this very, very quickly, is he referred to this war as being the most significant war victory in Israel's history. This is Michael Oren, the author of this incredible volume, The 6-Day War. And he actually paused and said that the victory of Israel in Gaza against Hamas is actually more significant a great victory than the 6-Day War. And I scratch my head in just absolute disbelief and wonder if he's read his own book. I wonder, in fact, if he remembers that the 6-Day War in Gaza, the 6-Day War wasn't just Gaza. It was against Arab armies with tanks and with jets and so on and so forth. It lasted 6. One could actually say that it was over after 2 days. But nonetheless, he thinks that war was less significant than this, almost forgetting that Israel in that war took control of the Sinai, took control of Gaza, took control of Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, as he calls it, took control of the Golan Heights, and liberated, united Jerusalem. I don't know what it is that he sees here, unless he wants to compare the release of 20 hostages after 80 others had died in captivity to be a victory. But this is insanity. And the reason is because there's a defect. It's a psychological defect that our side, our people, our nation, whatever it is, we supporters of Israel, sitting in the outside, that we've failed to, we're afraid to call a spade a spade. We're afraid to say that the United States is actually pressuring Israel, whereas they've given Hamas a pass. J.D. Vance just came back from Israel, where he was checking to make sure that Israel wasn't transgressing on this treaty, when in essence, it was Hamas that has been transgressing. They have not fulfilled phase one. And yet the Americans are already talking about, we're ready to go to phase two. Well, the deceased hostages who were part of phase one haven't been released. Never mind the fact that Hamas has actually come out and said that they will not disarm. They will. And one more thing, because I know that this is a very short broadcast, I don't want to forget. It was revealed with a full measure of credibility that the technocrats, which the treaty calls to take control of Gaza as part of its governance until it will lead to a pathway to self-determination, as it says, and then statehood, the technocrats are supposed to take over. We now learn that 50% of the technocrats have already been chosen by Hamas. And who are the other 50% chosen by? The Palestinian Authority. And Israel has assured us that they would not be part of the governance of Gaza. If, in fact, any of this is true, if, in fact, Hamas exists, then we've lost. Because the plans were, there were three goals, there were many more than three, but the three significant goals were, not in any specific order, was to destroy Hamas. And then it was morphed to defeat Hamas. And then it was morphed into, we can't let Hamas beat us. That was it. The other one was the release of the hostages. Well, after a number had died, we finally got 20. And I for one, question whether or not there might not still be one or two living. My God, why would Hamas not do that? Hold them as leverage. And the third one was that Hamas, this was the goal, Hamas would not have any say in the future governance of Gaza. Well, if the first goal was achieved, which is the destruction of Hamas, why is it necessary to even speak of a third goal, which is that Hamas wouldn't govern? Well, if they were destroyed, they wouldn't be there to govern. The organization wouldn't be extant. So all of a sudden, I have a feeling that we've been hoodwinked again. And tragically, is yes, master, yes, master, yes, master.
Yeah. And it's
Terrible.
obvious that Hamas will be in charge of Gaza. And not only that, but they are, if elections were held today in Judea and Samaria for the Arabs there, they would elect Hamas, not the
Overwhelmingly.
PA. Overwhelmingly. So, and exactly how is this re-education, according to the plan, to take place? UNRWA is still around. All the textbooks are still around. Hamas is still around. All the vicious Jew haters are still around. Who is is Erdogan the one that's going to be perceived as the moderate Muslim leader? He hates Israel. They had a celebration on the anniversary for Yahya Sinwar in Turkey.
That's right. That's right.
So who, what, where, when?
Yeah. Well, I will answer in a very disturbing way that on the cover of Time magazine this week, we have Donald Trump.
Yep.
And it's a very statesman-like picture and everything else. And in the interview, he talks about the fact Israel had as a non-starter for the negotiations. And you and I and others watching this remember quite well the days when Israel said we don't negotiate because it just guarantees that it's going to happen again. But the issue of Marwan Barghouti, who's serving 5 consecutive life sentences, Israel, was the apparent choice. He could be the imagine he could be the unifier for the Palestinian people in establishing their thing. And Donald Trump comes out in this interview, basically says, I will decide if Israel releases
Right.
Marwan Barghouti. Yes, Begin, Israel is a banana republic. And by the way, being ahead, because that the last clause or two, I was looking at that deal of the century, From Peace to Prosperity, which was the first thing that was published on January 28th of 2020, when Jared Kushner put out this 181-page incredible, with a detailed minutia of how peace is going to be found in the Middle East. And the conclusion was it would lead to Palestinian statehood. But the question that nobody asks is, and it's not rhetorical, if in fact all is well, and of course it's laughable to suggest that it would be, but if all is well, the question is, Israel will continue, there'll be two states. Israel will be one, with a very happy and thriving Arab minority population represented in the Knesset, to a country that they don't recognize. But Palestine, we know this for a fact. This isn't conjecture. The Arabs have told us as much. Palestine will be Judenrein. It'll be free of Jews. Why isn't that part of the discussion? And the reason is because I've always said that there's a very simple formula that defines the way that Israel has been negotiating now for 2 generations in the Middle East. And that formula is Israel gives and the Arabs get. And this is just when you introduce this as the Gaza Appeasement plan, it's exactly what it is. And the United States is appeasing by having Israel pay the currency, somehow satisfy or satiate the Arab desire to survive and be the enemy even again in the future.
And on the recent interview with on 60 Minutes with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, they both elevated the status of Hamas leaders by humanizing them.
Yeah.
By having total empathy for them. I never thought that I would see that, but I did, and we all saw that on 60 Minutes just a few days ago.
Available for anyone who wants to see it. They can go online and they can find the entire interview, including the parts that weren't. And there's also a transcript, which I've done both, a transcript. And you're right, Steve Witkoff, for example, was talking about the fact that he addressed the head of the Hamas negotiations as a father who also lost a son. Steve Witkoff, having lost his son to a drug overdose, my God, and Al-Haya, having lost his son, Israel killed him in Doha. The one is viewed as a martyr, having died on behalf of the war against the Jews. And Witkoff says we understood each other. And then Jared Kushner then jumps in and talks about what a wonderful, as you said, a humane moment, that we were humans on two sides of a dispute, whatever. It's disgusting. These two guys, Witkoff and Jared Kushner, are two clowns who, I'm just assuming that when they got their real estate license, Jared Kushner was a very wealthy, failed newspaperman, whatever, married well, went into real estate, and on and on. I'm imagining that in the real estate test that both of them took in the United States to get their real estate license, the reading of the Quran wasn't part of the requirement. That's just my guess.
Right. Meir, we're running out of time. We're going to take it up again. This obviously every single day or every single hour, there's more reports coming out, very shocking. And we'll be discussing it again in the next few days, having a show. It would be preferable if we have a show every single day to keep up with everything and inform the viewers of what's going on. But go ahead, Meir.
Just once. For those of us who watch the happenings in the Middle East on a daily basis, the needle is moving, and it's not moving in the proper direction as far as advocates and supporters of Israel are concerned. It's not moving in the right direction. Anyhow, I thank you for the opportunity and look forward to do it again.
Thank you very much, Meir, and we'll do it again. Everyone, I'm asking everyone who's viewing this show, if you could please share this on your social media networks, be it X, Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp groups. We'd really appreciate it. We'll get the word out to a lot more people and build up this channel that we have. Thank you very much. Shalom, shalom.